Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm your host, Kiana Canada. Welcome back to the Kiana Canada Show. Before we get into today's topic, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember that your likes and your shares, what it does is it pushes videos like this up in the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that videos like this are important. But we must be reminded that because videos like this are not pushed up in the algorithm, that does not mean that videos like this are not important. So as you see, I'm back recording in this location. It's just because when I was recording in my accommodation, some of my housemates were just walking around, which was not a problem, but I like the lighting better in here. So oh, I think this is where I will consider recording. Uh, As you still know, I don't have a microphone because if you've been watching and following up on the videos that I posted, you understand that I had to sell my microphone. But that's okay. The universe is going to make a way. Things are going to get better. And, I'll probably have a studio or something. I don't know. But I'm throwing it out there in the universe, and hopefully the universe catches it. Today, what we're going to be talking about is Sab's coverage of Candace Owens and her commentary on cancel culture. And then we are going to be canvassing the real reason why I think the Federal Bureau of Investigation is cutting ties with the Anti-Defamation League. And last but not least, we are going to be going over Ezra Klein's interview with Radley Balko. Now, I know that there are some opinions about Ezra Klein, and we're not going to get into that in this video. It's just, I'm more so going to be covering the information that Balko has provided to Klein and that interview that he gave. So hopefully there's going to be some legato to this video. Things are going to flow smoothly, and hopefully we'll get it uploaded on YouTube at some point. So Sabby commented on one of Candace Owens' recent videos, and her coverage was what I call, it was about Kirkgate. And so in the commentary, Sabby opines that after Owens began asking questions about her videos she reviewed in Palestine, and after her discussion with Rabbi Barclay, Daily Wire terminated her employment, and she was ousted from Turning Point and CPAC. And I think that we all can remember, right? We've seen that happen. I think, in my personal opinion, and I don't think that Sabby disagrees, that that cancel culture can be on both sides of the aisle. So while I do acknowledge the veracity of those claims, as I will reiterate, cancel culture is on both sides. So, for example, here in Northern Ireland, when I did not know enough about the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict, and was ignorant, of course, about this conflict, and when I sought to learn more, and I asked questions regarding the Palestinian movement in Northern Ireland, I was bullied. Not only was I bullied, but solicitors refused to take my case. And part of the reason as to why this is because, of course, I am an American in the international protection process, and I am currently undergoing transnational repression. So transnational repression, the goal of transnational repression is to make you an enemy of the host country, to turn all structures against you so that you leave the host country and go back to your home country where the government can have greater access to you and can persecute you more. But other elements of the Sorry, my allergies are cutting up because it's been it's been raining for like the last 3 days. So since I think Friday, the last couple of days, or Thursday. So Thursday it rained all day. Thursday it rained all day. Friday, and then it rained some this morning. And uh, my allergies is just, oh my god, like I've never like it's weird because I think that like allergy season is like in the summertime, but oftentimes like I've noticed that my allergies always tend to become agitated in the fall. So that's something else. So going back to what we were talking about, so when this jurisdiction learned about like my political position, they did not allow me to write my dissertation on transnational repression. I was isolated and left in exile. And as you know, my Section 95 support, which is not the accommodation, but the financial support, was halted. And this was all planned. I think that Irish American intelligence agencies came together and worked behind the scenes, and so they were doing everything that they could to hit on the pressure points and to find pressure points that would push me out of the university, to find pressure points that would convince the masses to not advocate for me, to turn against me. And we're going to be getting into why, like, the United States is isolated right now. See, this is a karmic cycle, right? And you can't do your citizens wrong and expect for there not to be karma for that. And so the United States, while it was busy with the Republic of Ireland and then the Irish government here in Northern Ireland, working to turn all of my allies against me, or my potential allies against me, the same thing is happening to the United States. I mean, are you witnessing this? The United States is a pariah within the international community. And that's because there is a cycle of where you do wrong, wrong will come back to you. So let's go ahead and continue. So Sabby is correct that politics can be quite cultish. Uh, Yet I would submit, as she did, that such behavior can be found, to reiterate, on both sides. So where we are seeing a cancel culture on the side of the conservative side within the United States, the cancel culture is concentrated here on the left side, so left politics here in Northern Ireland. But once you're out of the grotto and you're out of their control, uh, as we've seen with a number of people in the United States, once you're out of the grotto, they're going to smear you. There's going to be these smear campaigns. There's going to be these lies that are coming up about you, and that's because they need to control a narrative, and they need to have this. What is it called? I think it's like this imago, right? It's this image of they want us to have this imago of them. So them is the United States and these governments. So they would seek and they would want us to have this imago that they are picture perfect, that they are our avatar, that they are holier than thou, that there is like this halo effect that they want us to have as it relates to their behavior. But when that is shattered, when that is cracked, then you see that there is a lot of intimidation, there's smear campaigns, and unfortunately, it can get quite dangerous. So there's another issue that is happening within the United States. So the FBI decided to cut ties with the ADL. And a lot of independent commentators are coming up with their own conclusions and their theories as to why that is. But Kash Patel stated, quote, "This FBI won't partner with political fronts masquerading as watchdogs," end quote. And reportedly, Patel described ADL as, quote, disgraceful ops disgraceful ops spying on Americans, end quote. Now, it's important to state that Patel did not elaborate, nor did he provide evidence to substantiate that claim that the ADL has spied on Americans. And we understand that this spying on Americans really comes from the FBI and the Central Intelligence Agencies. These are two agencies that actually are collecting data and collecting data on Americans, right? Mass collecting this data and using it to spy on Americans. Indeed, we've seen a few years ago with Edward Snowden, who discovered that NASA and other agencies were collecting large amounts of that data on American citizens and using that, of course, spying on us and violating our right to privacy. So I think this could be a PSYOP. This could be a PSYOP from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and that they're not telling us the real reason as to why they are severing their relationship and divorcing the Anti-Defamation League. And I would argue that in my personal opinion, I don't think that the FBI is divorcing ADL because of its connection with James Comey. I think that the FBI is cutting ties with the ADL because the ADL is connected to Israel, and Israel is hemorrhaging global support. It's not a secret. Israel admits that. Other commentators and independent commentators, the media is admitting that. Piers Morgan admits that. And of course, like, I'm not saying that Piers Morgan is a source, but I'm just showing you how far this is going and how many people are talking about it. So you may say, well, Kiana, like, what does that really mean? So in other words, the United States is viewed as losing the information war too. And the United States does not like to lose. We know that, right? We know that the United States likes to be on top. It's been on top for a very long time. And as a result, its support for the ADL is now escalating. And so I think, in my personal opinion, like, this has been the plan all along. I think that it's happening. And I think I may have broached this on my YouTube channel before, but I'm going to go into it in greater detail right now. That, in my personal opinion, I feel like conservatives, the white evangelicals, are unlinking themselves from the ADL. And I would argue that this was the goal from the start, because they needed to use Israel to get into office. And now that they're slowly distancing themselves from the ADL. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever listen to these, it's like these Twitter spaces, and you go on there's always far left groups and groups that will possibly, like, identify themselves as gropers, etc. And their whole point on these spaces is to try and get the masses to go against Jewish people and Israel. It's quite cowardly. And I've listened to a number of these spaces where they're doing that. And as we know, that ideology is realistically and unfortunately within the administration, and it's permeating across the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Central Intelligence Agency. It's permeating across these agencies. And you may say, well, Kiana, where's the evidence to support that? Well, there was evidence to support it. There were a number of reports, especially around 2018, 2019, that most intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies were staffed with people that held these fractious, divisive, white nationalist belief systems. And I think that that's the evidence for that. And so, in my personal opinion, the far right has hornswoggled Israel. And this, for me, it raises an important question about what the war that we see happening is really about and who started it. Now, this is not to argue that on October 7th that the Palestinian military officials weren't involved. I 100% agree that they were involved, in that what happened on October 7th was a horrific attack on the Jewish people. That's not something that any group or community should go through. No ethnic group should go through anything of that sort. But if you remember dating back to that day, right? Those military leaders were like, did they do it? Like, they were like, did this come from, they were saying, asking themselves if it really came from them. And that raises an important question to me, ladies and gentlemen, about whether or not a third party is involved in stoking the flames of this war. And so I will reiterate, I think that it's happening. I think that what we see printed across the pages of Project 2024 manual is coming alive, in that there is an effort there's this backward looking change, right? It's an effort to take us back in time to a period where minorities could not protect themselves legally, socially, emotionally, economically, etc. And if you remember in the video I previously uploaded, I stated that once you attack that link that's at the top, all those other links are going to come undone. They're going to unlink themselves, right? So it does. The weakest link does not need to be the link at the bottom. The weakest link could very well be that link that's connected to the top. And once you unlink that strong link at the top, then all those other links will, everything will unravel from there. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with the FBI distancing itself from the ADL, because the FBI and the U.S. government is attempting to go in a different direction. Now, this is a theory of mine. I theorize that the FBI, the U.S. government, is trying to distance itself from Israel because it is isolated in the international community, and we'll see how that pans out. We'll see if that prediction comes true or not, but or we'll see if that theory unfolds. But that's what it appears to be happening. Further, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't noticed, like independent media is becoming more right-wing based, and certain people are being eulogized, and we're not going to really delve into that here. It's something for you to think about. But my question that I really want to bring to you is like, we've seen a number of these incidents take place across the United States where children have lost their lives to gun violence, and innocent people have been caught in the crossfires or the crosshairs of this gun violence, right? And it raises the question as to why those people haven't been eulogized as well. Now, I would argue that my position has always been clear. I'm an abolitionist when it comes to guns. I feel like there should not be guns on the street of America. I feel that they're very dangerous. And I just think it's unfortunate that we're seeing this take place across the United States, and that still there has not been bipartisan support to really cure this epidemic of gun violence that we're seeing that's so prevalent in the United States. But going back to independent media, so that there's been what I refer to as diametric content saturation. And I feel like this is seeking to enculturate us to submit to hegemonic dominance. I mean, are you watching the news right now? Are you watching the media? Are you listening to these stories? It's like there is, and this does not necessarily have to do with Kurtgate. This is realistically and truthfully, ladies and gentlemen, about the entire conservative movement, and the conservative movement not taking responsibility for their own role and the role that they play in division within the United States of America. Now, in a previous video, I have stated, like, I would want nothing more for the country to come together, for both parties to come together, for there to be unity, and for Americans not to battle each other, and for there to be some coalition on the rights of all people within the United States, and for there to be some agreements. But we can't do that, and that possibly could never happen, ladies and gentlemen, if there is a continuation of politicians pushing divisive rhetoric into the ether and using incidents like Kurtgate to separate the American people and to segregate them from each other. So that's something for you to think about, and that's something for you to put into your mental Rolodex and maybe cogitate on it, or for you to formulate your own opinion about it. But we're going to move forward into the next story. Now, Ezra Klein did an interview with Radley Balko. And so in that interview, Balko speaks of an increase in militarization after Trump took office. And we know that to be true. When Trump was in office last time, there was militarization on the streets of on the streets of the nation. And so we're not new to it, right? And he points to, or rather references, what he believes that there's going to be further militarization across the United States. And there are 2 points in time that Balko points to. So he points to where there was militarization during the crack epidemic and after 9/11. But there are two specific incidents that we're not seeing this same concentration of militarization on the streets of America, and it has to do with the current. So there's been a plague of, or like this epidemic of drugs happening within the United States now. It's of course not a crack epidemic, but there is an epidemic where there is other types of narcotics that are being pushed onto the streets of the United States. And to reiterate, there is gun incidents that are also, there's an epidemic of gun violence that's taking place across the United States. This is not isolated to Democratic cities or Democratic states. This is also within Republican states and Republican cities as well. And it raises an important question as to why the National Guard hasn't been called to those cities and those states. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't argue that the National Guard should be called to any city or any state. But what's unfortunate is that, as Balko acknowledges, is that the Trump administration has called the National Guard to Democratic cities when there has been a decrease in crime in those cities. And I think it's a way to militarize and to bring fear to the citizen in those cities, right? And indeed, Balko, what he argues is that the U.S. increase in militarization has not been a good faith effort to pursue dangerous people in these cities. It's an effort to usher what I refer to, and of course, what has been referred to throughout time as backward-looking change. So he gives an example, and you can go to Homeland Security's X page, and you can see how they tweet these racialized, propagandized tweets that have really been visible in many divisive campaigns that we've seen in Nazi Germany. And that's not me calling Homeland Security Nazis or saying that any person within that office are Nazis. I'm acknowledging that the information that they have been tweeting is reminiscent of that information that has been seen in Nazi Germany or seen on the streets when we are looking at campaigns to divide people. And Balko acknowledges that as well. And he further argues that the Trump administration has also been building its own paramilitary force. Now, this is the crux of the interview with Balko and Klein, and the arguments that Balko is putting forward. What he hypothesizes is that he believes that the Trump administration is attempting to create its own paramilitary force for its own selfish reasons. And those reasons could very well be to demonstrate supreme power of the Trump administration, of the government in general, and to intimidate citizens. And for me, it raises a question as to whether this is exploratory or whether the U.S. is becoming a crazy state. Now, when I say crazy state, this is not like an epithet. When we look at national security and international security, we come to understand that there is a description of crazy states, and they are defined as having little or no central authority and are ravaged by warlords and militias. And I don't think that there's enough evidence to say that the United States right now is ravaged completely by warlords and militias. But if the Trump administration is truly seeking to create its own paramilitary force, as Balko argues, then it is conceivable, ladies and gentlemen, that that could be a direction that we are headed in. And it raises the question as to whether these attacks that we have seen across the United States are, in fact, paramilitary attacks. Now, there are some independent media commentators, and they have their own opinion about that. And some argue that they believe that this is coming from the outside. Some think that it's coming from countries, some of the allied countries, some of the adversarial countries. But I would argue that I think that this is coming from within. And sometimes when you're within a country, it's difficult to make that assessment and to make that judgment. But when you're on the outside and you're looking in, you're able to see clearly that this is a country that is eating itself from the inside out. And so I guess the argument that, or my contention, is that most of these attacks that we have seen, they do have an air of paramilitarism to them, right? But not only that, I think the question that we should be asking is like, who is training these people to engage in these acts? Where were they getting this from? Who is doing this? Now, last but not least, Balko, he mentions the No Kings protest, and due to the militarization that is happening across the United States and the Trump administration's I think how he described it as dismantling of several departments within the government. Many people have came out on the streets, and these people have been persons with the least amount of power, have marched in opposition of the administration. And I worry, ladies and gentlemen, about the branding of the No Kings. I guess that the branding of that protest, right? I think that there is room to rebadge, because in essence, when we look at Trump and compare Trump to kings and other, like, not in this era, but previous eras, kings, any president of the United States would be compared to a king. But now, of course, things have changed, because if we look at the king of the United Kingdom, the king here in the United Kingdom has more so a ceremonial role and does not have the same powers as a prime minister. And in the United States, the prime minister is, or so the president in the United States has essentially the same role as a prime minister in the United Kingdom. And so I think that it probably would have been better to say like no emperors, or they use the word emperor in their messaging, because with a king only rules over one kingdom, And so that's like the United States ruling over just the United States alone. But an emperor rules over multiple kingdoms. So not only does the emperor rule over like the United States, but it rules over Austria and Australia and several European countries. You get the point. And I'm not saying that the Trump administration is ruling over these countries, but that would have probably been a more persuasive argument to make. And indeed, the United States has treated some of its allied countries as satellite states where it has an authority over these countries. And we see this so clearly with embassies that are positioned within a state or a country, and in essence is able to instruct those countries and to co-opt those countries. And so I think that is in a similar vein and could possibly be what protesters that were marching in the No Kings protest were trying to allude to reiterate. We know that emperors, they rule over multiple kingdoms, and we see this, and it's strange, isn't it? Because there is the king of the United Kingdom, and if you look at multiple states, so if you look at multiple countries, you can see the king in the United Kingdom ruling over those other countries that are outside of the United Kingdom. And I know that this is just really a tangential point, but we're not seeing like a lot of emperors today. I think there's an emperor, where is it, in Japan? There's an emperor in Japan. But we're not seeing a lot of emperors and very few kings. So it would be interesting to know exactly like what their messaging was and like what the point of that was. I should have perhaps like in the future, like I'll reach out to somebody that's part of that protest and attempt to ask them those critical questions about what they mean. But of course, you know, I haven't seen, and tell me if you have, because I haven't been in the United States, but I haven't seen much more of those protests happening across the United States. So I wonder if they are taking some time off to rebadge, or if they're taking some time to come up with some new material, some new arguments, or maybe they're changing their game plan. Remains to be seen. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? What do you think about the cancel culture? Do you think the cancel culture is only on the right, or do you think the cancel culture is only on the left? Do you think the cancel culture is on both sides? And what do you think about what's happening across the United States currently? Do you think that there is going to be an increase in militarization on the streets of America? Do you think that this militarization is going to percolate across other cities and states, even those that are red? And if not, why do you think so? And last, what do you think about the FBI cutting its ties with the ADL? Do you think that Patel's contention that the ADL has been spying on conservatives in America, do you think that there is any truth to that, or do you think that that's a ruse to separate itself from the ADL because of what's happening right now in the international community and the fact that Israel right now is hemorrhaging global support? It's always something that I want to know. These topics are interesting to me, and we will look forward to talking to you next time. Now, I may be recording in my accommodation next time. The lighting in the kitchen. Sometimes I record in the kitchen because the lighting is good there. But I attempted to record this video yesterday, but my housemate came across while I was filming, so that's why I'm recording this over. And so, to reiterate, I like the lighting in here a lot better. So I may record there, I may record here. We'll let me know what you think. Do you think it looks better in here or there? And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you next time. Bye bye.